so this is one I wanted to unbox for a bit. I was pretty excited about. It's a pretty grimy and gross Sega Dreamcast. This was one of my favorite consoles back in the day. I'm not really sure how well it's aged over the years, but I saw this. I picked it up off of eBay. I believe it was around $26 shipped for these items, and then I picked this up separately, the S-Video AV cable, just to test this out. So let me give you some closer shots here just to give you an idea of the condition. It's got some yellowing, some scrapes and scuffs. Just looks like it was neglected. And so I want to try to clean this up and get it going again. See where things are at. So here's the controller. It's just got some dirt and grime, some discoloration on the wire. The memory card. The screen looks intact, it's just dirty. And overall, everything just looks really dirty. And so I'm hoping that it will just clean up after a little bit of TLC. But we'll see if there's any other issues along the way. And so where I want to start with this one is just to hook it up and see if it works, out the gate and just needs to be cleaned, or if we'll need to do more from there. While getting the Dreamcast ready for the initial test, notice that the lid button got stuck, and so now this isn't closing. So I'll have to address that in a moment. One of the nice things about the Dreamcast is it just uses these standard 2-prong plugs, and so usually have one of these laying around the house. So makes things a little bit easier trying to power it up. And so I'm just going to plug this in and see if we at least get power here. Okay, so let's see. Yep. It's powering on. And you can kind of hear the laser. So those are all good signs. I've heard the fans are pretty loud on the Dreamcast, so that's pretty normal based on what I've read at this point. It's been so long since I've used a Dreamcast, but these are all good signs, so I'm going to try to just quickly clean this button and see if we could at least do some initial tests before we start disassembling or doing any further cleaning. Alright, so after cleaning a bit, I just used a toothbrush with some rubbing alcohol. The button finally popped back up again. And so I think it's just dirty. It'll probably need more thorough cleaning there in a little bit. But I got the AV in power, and let's see how things go with the first test here. Alright, great, it's booting up. Alright, I heard that's a sign that the clock battery is dead, and so we'll probably have to replace that too. But at least we got some signs of life, and so I want to plug in the controller and get a game here and see if we can boot up any of that. Alright, so I have it fired back up. I have this game inside here. Got the controller plugged in. The cool thing is the controller seems to be working fine, and the VMU memory card looks like it still has signs of life, and so that's pretty cool. So I wanted to see if the game disc will load here, so let's try to see what happens. I'm not sure that it's spun at all, so see the Atari logo's here. Let's see if it does anything. Okay, it's spinning just a little bit, so it's just not reading it. What I'm going to do is try to clean the lens first, and then we can go on from there. Alright, I have just a little bit of Windex sprayed onto this Q-tip here, and what I want to do is just very gently try to clean the lens. And I'd like to use a Windex just because it doesn't really leave any sort of residue and dries pretty quickly. So I'm just cleaning around this area, and there's just some dust and other debris in there, and so I'm going to go ahead and finish just touching this up a bit, and then we can try a game again. Okay, so here's things after the first pass of cleaning in the laser area, and pretty dirty, and so I'm going to get the game in here again and see if it goes any further. Alright, I got the game loaded back in, and so let's see if we get anything different. Nope. Nope, same thing. So it's still not reading discs, but there are some good signs. So the date and time are still saved, so maybe the clock battery is actually still good, because it hasn't asked me to change the date and time every time I've turned it on and off here. So that's another good sign, but we're going to need to disassemble this and clean everything, and possibly do something with the laser, maybe like adjust the potentiometer or something along those lines. And so let's go into disassembling the console, and then we'll move on from there. To open up the console, you'll have 4 screws. One here, which is located underneath the network adapter, and so this just slides out and you'll have access to it. And then there's 3 more, and they're just Phillips head screws. And after that, you're gonna flip your console over. Make sure just to hit the power on and off, just to discharge maybe any possible electricity that might still be in there from when you had it plugged in. And after that, this console top should just pop off here. Okay, I took this opportunity to dust the inside of the console. I cleaned the fan a bit, and so moving on to getting to the potentiometer, which is under here. And so I'm going to need to flip this over in the assembly, but before I get there, you know, this cable is going to be underneath here. I've already pulled out a little bit of it, but you're going to be gently pulling up these plastic clips in order to remove this cable underneath. And so just a little pressure, not much because it's just plastic, and you also want to watch out for this plastic piece here. This is the mechanism that when you close the lid on the console, it tells the laser the lid is closed, so you don't want to break that either. So once this is free, next we're going to move on to getting this housing flipped over. Now that you have this cable free from underneath here, we're going to move the laser, and so we're going to move it up to this position, and so just a little bit of force will get it up. Don't be too aggressive with it, that way it'll loosen up the ribbon cable. And so this housing just comes up here, and by loosen I mean just, you know, give you some room for you to flip it over like this. And so you want to keep the ribbon cable attached at all times. And so now that it's flipped over, and I'm using the top part of the Dreamcast for it to rest on since it's about the same height. We're gonna take a look at the potentiometer, and so that piece that we're going to be working on is right here. And so I'm going to get my multimeter, and we'll begin finding the readings for the where it is currently, and then start adjusting from there. So my understanding is that not all lasers are alike, and so there's not really a specific number for each console. They might all have a different sweet spot when it comes to getting the laser to work, especially as they're getting older. And so what I'm using is my multimeter set to read ohms, and so it's kind of like the setting with the upside down horseshoe. And so I'm going to use the leads on two places here to get a reading. It's just kind of hard to hold it in place. Let me see if I can get it something consistent here. Okay, there we go. So looks like 809, 810 is my starting point, and so I'm going to write that number down in case I needed to go back to it in the beginning or towards the end if something happens. And so that way, as you're making adjustments, you can take a reading and know how far you've adjusted the potentiometer. And so I'm going to write down the 810, and then we're going to adjust it a little bit and see where it goes from there. So I made the first adjustment and tested it out, and it's still not reading discs, and so I'm down to 774. And so what I'm doing here is I'm using this Phillips head screwdriver, and I'm fitting it into the potentiometer and making clockwise very small adjustments, and lowering the resistance. That way will increase the power of the laser in hopes that it may read the disc. And so I'm going to make another small adjustment here and see what reading we can get to. I'm hoping to get it to low 700s, and now I can perform my next test. Okay, after making some incremental adjustments, I was able to get it down to 674, which was just about 100 below where I was before. And so I'm going to try that out and see if we can get a game running. Okay, so at 674, I got somewhat of a reading. It still didn't read the disc, but I could hear the laser working a little bit more, so I made just a smaller adjustment on this one. So I'm at 643, and so I'm gonna test this one out and see if we can get the game reading. Alright, so I ran some more tests here, and I worked my way down from 643 to 620 to 566, and none of them were reading the disc at that point. And so I made a bigger jump down to 498, and still wasn't reading, but fortunately I had a second disc, so I tried that at 498 and it worked. So I started working my way back up from there just to see what would be the highest resistance, with the still being able to read the disc. And so went to 516, it worked. Went to 599, it didn't work, and so I ended up at 562 and got the game working here. So I needed to have both hands free since the system is still open, but I just wanted to show you it working here.
of the dead.
And so this all appears to be working well now. I'll do more testing on that later, but in the meantime what I'm going to do is start cleaning the shell and cleaning the controllers here, and then we can take a look at how the restoration goes from there. To clean the shell, I'm going to be using some Windex. I have some magic eraser, a toothbrush, and Q-tips, and so I'm just going to give it a good scrubbing here and see where it stands after that. everything all cleaned up. For the sake of time, I didn't go through every piece, but I want to show you some of the after. And everything cleaned up pretty well. There's just a little bit of yellowing on the top of this console. Here's the memory unit and the controller. And so I'm happy with the results. I'm glad to know it's working again. Definitely going to put this to use and try out some light gun games. I may address the yellowing with some retro brighting in a future video. And I did notice that the clock battery was asking to be reset again, when I plugged it back in. So I may need to replace that. And so I may address some things in later videos, but at least, we got through getting this working again and cleaned up. And so I really appreciate you following along. And thank you for watching this video. And I hope you have a great day.